So, namely, what I do with the builds right now is rely upon two critical multipliers, each 1.5 times to equal 2.25 times the base critical damage of any weapon I use. And I already have a number of perks modifying damage, helpfully. So you have the weapon called the Microfusion Hyperbreeder Alpha, and it's a weapon that is a very overpowered version of the Recharger pistol. It's kind of like a laser submachine gun that produces its own ammo. You might as even well call it like a ranged melee weapon, because you never run out of ammo, and the only thing you have to worry about is it losing its condition. But I have the jury rigging perk, which allows me to not worry about that, because as long as I can find any old laser pistol or plasma pistol, it's good. You can find those in Lonesome Road somewhat often. So basically, I use that, and because I've got the set lasers for fun perk, that's a special perk that you get just by doing a lot of laser damage, and Lurid Death increases damage. A number of perks. Lonesome Road perk also does it, where you leave Edie in the silo. That really helps you. And what it boils down to is that with the Eye for an Eye perk, which can increase your damage by 50% for 5 limbs crippled, and you can compensate for aim loss with steady speed. Walking speed you can compensate for with atomic if you're in an irradiated area typically. You get what says a base damage of 50, but a damage over time of 350. So 7 shots per second, not too bad, especially since it recharges while you're firing it often. And if you can manage your usage of firing and kind of like fire and then not fire, you're pretty well off. Now, with this weapon, what makes it special is that it's an automatic weapon, more or less, but it has the critical multiplier of a normal weapon, like a semi-automatic weapon. That's pretty broken. And I think the only other weapon I can think of at the moment that somewhat imitates that is a survivalist rifle, which is a much more powerful version of a service rifle chambered for 12.7 millimeter ammunition, and that's basically a 50 caliber bullet with less charge. I don't even know if it's a realistic bullet, but basically with this perk you're going to be getting a lot of critical damage. The damage is effectively going to be like 700 per second. Now with very hard difficulty it halves your damage, so you're only getting 350. But that means that the toughest enemies are going to die within less than 2 seconds on very hard. And that doesn't even go into like the flagpole weapon Old Glory that Ulysses used, that has 80 base critical damage. So that is 200, maybe 260 or 70 critical damage, plus its base damage of 40 is about 300. And you can swing pretty fast with it with Slayer, with Rushing Water, with a little bit with like irradiated effects you have, but you're really going to be knocking anything out with like a 50% critical rate with that weapon. And you could buff it further with True Police Stories, which is increasing your critical chance further. But in the course of things, I use Ulysses Duster, which increases your critical chance by 5%. Then it's a light armor, so it increases your critical chance with a flat critical chance of 5%, but that's after the multiplier. So that means that something before the multiplier, if the multiplier's higher, it makes a bigger effect. If it's a really low multiplier, like for machine guns, but there is a multiplier, then a flat one is going to benefit you more. For example, a weapon that would never get critical hits, like a Gatling laser, can get up to 1 in 5 shots being critical with all the clothing. And then the other thing I wear is the First Recon Beret, which increases it by 5%. And there isn't really any combo of clothing that does quite as good as all those things put together. Now, typically I don't even need to use any consumables because you can just shake it off and not have anything healing. If you have a good strategy and you choose your targets carefully, you don't need them. But in the course of this video, I show a lot of footage where I'm putting myself out in the open and attacking a lot of strong enemies, some of the best enemies in the game. And Deathclaws, they do 125 damage, the normal ones. So that's 250 on hard mode, or very hard, without any defensive abilities. And what are you going to do with that? Basically, the only way to really survive, especially when they're taking you on a lot, is use Implant GRX to slow down their movement so they can't attack you and you can evade them better. And take Battle Brew, Slasher, and Med-X, which will give you 85% damage resistance, which is broken. I mean, Fallout 3 had damage resistance commonly, but this game doesn't. I mean, the whole effect of DT, where armor piercing can be good sometimes, but sometimes you don't want to have hollow points because of DT, and getting over that, it's an interesting mechanic. Sometimes weak ammo, or weak armor can fend off weak bullets very well, but most of the time DT is not helpful. Even if you could get really high DT by like taking Cass's Whiskey perk, Remnant's power armor, and toughness perks and implants, all that, it's not gonna really help you against an anti-material rifle. That's armor piercing, anti-tank. So you're gonna need all those health things, or defensive things, but you'll also need like super stim packs, and to compensate for some of the effects of the crippling perk, Eye for an Eye, which gives you great damage, mostly for non-critical weapons that get most of their damage, or all, from regular damage and not criticals. That would be miniguns, for example, machine guns, explosives for sure, like grenade machine gun, Fat Man. Those, you want Eye for an Eye, definitely.